Okay, so the iPhone SE, pretty pedestrian update. I think more or less precisely what everybody expected. Same design, looks like an iPhone 8, has an A15 chip, still has those like chunky bezels on the top and the bottom of the phone. Still the same LCD screen, still a physical Touch ID button that isn't actually a physical Touch ID button. It's like the haptic feedback one, so it doesn't like actually touch in, but it is there. Press in, I mean, it does exist. It
feels like a button. Feels good.
It feels like a button. Yeah, it's hard to tell the difference if you like jumped between the two. I just remember like going from the iPhone 7 to the iPhone 8, and like that was one of the things Apple was hyping up at the time, and like I truly didn't notice the difference between the two. It felt like the same phone.
Yeah, people still don't believe me when I tell them that like it's not a button, and I'm like, turn your phone off, try and press it, and they're like, no.
Well, it's like the trackpad, right? In the MacBook.
People don't
Pro,
believe that
MacBook
either.
Air. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like this phone again, I always really like writing and doing videos about the iPhone SE. It's not a phone for me, right? Like I always have that in my brain when I write about it. I want something that's like a high end. I don't necessarily need like the best of the best, but if I'm going to buy
you need an iPhone 11.
Yeah, your video. Yeah, that's what I think my review is going to end up being, a response to your video, my review of the iPhone SE. Yeah, it supports 5G. It's got the A15 chip. That's the same chip as the iPhone 13 series. It's $579 in Canada, which is
actually cheaper than the last SE.
Yeah, it's
the last one was $599.
Price for what you're getting, right? In a sense. But also it's an extremely outdated phone in other respects, right? Like it looks like an iPhone 8.
Just a small
boy.
I
think that holds it back.
It's so tiny. Like it feels like it's... I know this is like from a jaded cell phone reviewer perspective, but like holding that phone in my hand, it feels so small now to go back to. It's really crazy.
Yeah, the iPhone SE, I'm like, part of me is disappointed that they didn't update the design at all, but also I think it's probably the smartest play, because to me, the iPhone SE, both the last one and this newest version, are designed to do one thing, and that's to encourage those people who are still holding on to their iPhone 6S to finally upgrade and give Apple more money. Like that's why it exists.
Yeah. I think it brings a lot of kids in too, would be my guess.
Yeah, it's a good option for kids to get them into the ecosystem, but also I feel like an easy option for kids is to just give them your hand-me-down iPhone when you
perhaps an iPhone 11. I'm gonna plug this.
Perhaps an iPhone 11.
Yeah, perhaps an iPhone 11. I mean,
one of the more like crazy out there things that I've heard Apple talk about before is like, in some ways internally they position the iPhone SE as like a way to get people into the Apple like iOS ecosystem, like someone who has an iPhone, an Android device, like switching. And I don't know if I agree with that like on any level. Like I don't think anyone with an Android device is going to make the jump to iOS and jump to the iPhone SE. Like that doesn't seem to be the device that you would leap to if you were going to make that leap. I don't know. I just wanted to mention that because I've heard it a lot from the company, and I don't know if I buy it at all.
I like to think that from Apple's perspective, Android owners are only people that have sub $300 phones. Like that's what I like to think, that from Apple. When Apple told you that, they're like, yeah, when Android owners, and they were like, when like just the peasants, that's what like them.
Yeah,
I mean, we know that Android people have like sick ass phones all across the price range, but I don't know if Apple thinks that.
Yeah, that to an extent, I do think that line of reasoning that Apple wants people switching from Android to go to the iPhone SE, I do think that makes a little bit of sense if you're looking at a specific segment of Android users, that being the people who only care about getting the cheapest phone possible, because those people exist. When I worked at Best Buy selling phones, people would come in and most of the time they'd be like, what's the cheapest phone that I can get and the cheapest plan that I can get? And they would walk out with whatever the cheapest option was. And that was all they cared about, is spending the least amount of money. And so maybe the iPhone SE is meant to capture that audience.
Fair. Okay.
I think so. I mean, because of its like metal design, especially since this one does have ceramic shield as like an upgrade, maybe you could probably get 4 years out of it. No problem.
Oh, easy.
Honestly. Yeah, maybe more. How long? I'll be back in 6 years when my iPhone SE dies. That's my next project. How long can I use that?
I forgot about
the tour of the world.
I totally forgot about the ceramic shield side of things. That's a good point.
I think that's a good upgrade. Although, like you guys said, I'm a little sad they didn't upgrade the design. I was kind of hoping that they would go to like iPhone 8 Plus size and throw in MagSafe, and I was like, that seems like a really smart like twist for the iPhone SE. But it didn't happen, and I'm sad. I'm also not sad because my iPhone 11 video was banked entirely on the iPhone SE rolling out like it did. But I was hoping for some change. It would have been more fun, But we got the Mac Studio, so I guess that's our fun item this time. And that's kind of the thing. I guess they kind of like, the iPhone SE, as much as we want to talk about it, it doesn't hit like a different point in the market. It almost feels like exactly the same phone that came out before. It's like new chip, sure. It doesn't even seem like new camera hardware. It seems like mostly just like new camera software, ceramic shield, but same price. Like it's just still that like old, outdated iPhone that Apple's selling to just try and scoop up new customers.
That's a good thing to mention. So Apple's positioning the iPhone SE's camera as a new camera array, quote unquote, but it's the same. It's the same 12 megapixel like camera with the same aperture that was in the last one. It's just software stuff that it's doing, like deep fusion. There's like some other quirks in there and some new features. They claim that like if you take photos with the like 2020 iPhone SE and then you try the 2022, you'll like see the difference, which is a pretty lofty claim to make given it's the same camera. So that's something that when I get my hands on it, like I'm excited to try out, because I do think, and you wrote about it even in your iPhone 11 story, in a sense, like
yeah,
cameras have come a long way, but they also haven't at the same time, right? I think they've more come a long way on the like software post processing side of things, where more stuff can happen behind the scenes after you take the photo. Yeah,
and they've also come a long way.
To try.
One of the points of that too was exactly what you said, but one of the points was they've come a long way, but in the niche scenarios. Sensors have gotten a little bit bigger. They're still minuscule, but we get a little bit more light and low light situations. The stabilization's gotten a little better. I think video has gotten quite a bit better. That might be the bigger jump, but in terms of photos, like an iPhone in the past 4 years, any iPhone, you can take it out and take good photos. I think it's not a problem. But this does beg the question of the iPhone SE's camera system hasn't been updated, but Apple's marketing it as being updated with all these like software features, like photographic styles, all this, all that, being dependent on the iPhone or on the A15. But it's just like, is that really it? Why doesn't this iPhone 11? I'm literally not trying to bring this up as an example this time, but why does the iPhone 11 not get photographic styles, or why does it not get like all those things? I mean, it has deep fusion and a bunch of stuff, but yeah, exactly. Like this kind of illustrates that a lot of the times these camera improvements are limited via software more than hardware. It seems like. Yep. I don't know if that's exactly Fair true, point. But I think this really does color that in.
Well, it could be related to the neural engine or the neural chip or whatever Apple calls.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
If you ask them that, that's exactly what they say.
And the reason why I say that is look at the Pixel 6. Yeah, it's it's not an iPhone, but the Pixel 6 had Google's Tensor chip, and it had a whole bunch of fancy new camera features. And Google's main argument about why those camera features didn't come to older Pixels was that they relied on new hardware in the Tensor chip itself, specifically designed to make those features work. That said, some of them you could make work on older Pixels. For example, the Magic Eraser feature on Pixel 6, there was a way to kind of hack that onto older Pixels, and I ran that on a Pixel 3, and it worked fine. But, I think it was probably faster on the Pixel 6.
Mm-hmm.
So it might just be a matter of Apple going, okay, well, from a user experience perspective, the feature might work on an older chip, but it might not work as well as it does on a newer chip. And so we're going to limit it that way. I still think it's kind of BS, but that might just be the reasoning there.
No, I think that's fair. And we are like nitpicking. I mean, believe it or not, I don't think anyone's tripping over themselves to get the latest phone because of photographic styles, because that's just like the wackiest thing ever. But yeah, well, you're right. Like, that's a super good point.
It's also, this phone's not for us, right? That's what makes it fun and also a little more difficult for me to review every year, is like I could sit there and criticize the screen, the design, the physical home button, talk like forever about how I wish it looked more like the iPhone XR or XR, whatever it's called. Hate the name of that phone. But that's not what that's not who this is marketed to, right? It's strictly people that have like older iPhones that Apple is trying to coax into upgrading to a new device that have no interest in going to that like swipe navigation. They have the home button. They like it. They want to continue using it. They just want a new phone because their old phone's broken, right? And it's time for them to upgrade. And they want something that's familiar and that they know how to use, not like a new experience.
I'm totally on board with you. Totally on board. Like, let's sail the ship together. But that's insane, right? Like, the fact that Apple's just making a phone for home button enthusiasts is nuts, right? Because the home button, we all, like, it's like, none of us would go back to the home. I don't know anyone that would go back to the home button after leaving it behind, right? Do you guys feel like there's anyone that's like every day they're like, I hate all this extra screen space? Fair enough. Yeah.
My dad still uses the 3-button navigation on his Pixel,
but the 3-button navigation like will fade away and is like a much more like Apple could do maybe a software home button. Like that's a much they do have a software home button in the accessibility settings, but like that's a much more seamless transition. You know, like it's you still get full screen when you want to watch something full screen. Like those buttons go away, don't they? I'm pretty sure they do. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure they like fade away.
Setting.
No, not on the iPhone. I mean, like when you're using 3-button nav on an Android phone.
I don't know.
Like if you go like full screen in a YouTube video, would they stay on the side or would they go away? I think they go away, but I think you just swipe them back up. But no, you're right. And like it is old people, which I'm like not against at all. But it just seems nuts to me. Like they're just like, whatever, we'll just keep selling this. Like how many years?
Brad Bennett hates old people.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not. I'm fine with old people.
Fitting
Brad Bennett is
the bad
ageist.
boy.
Does this mean
for the bad boy of tech?
It's part of the bad boy of tech image. You hate old people. You don't want them to be happy with their phones. You want them to pay like tons of money and get an iPhone 13 Pro that they get frustrated with, and then they call their son asking them how that works.
That's my whole shtick is like call your kids more, talk to them, ask them how they're doing, ask them about their life. No, but it's just like, does this mean like they'll just keep selling iPhone SEs until like what this generation dies off? Like, is that the plan here?
Yeah, pretty much.
I think it's selling, right? Like they wouldn't.
I guess
we're on
it must
like
be.
the
You're right.
third
You're right.
iteration here, right? So like, if it wasn't selling, they wouldn't keep making it. They obviously have some level of data that like it's worth them creating this spare parts bin of a phone every couple of years and releasing it because people are buying it, right? Even back when the iPhone 8 released, when they made that jump to the 10. The iPhone 8 looks exactly like the SE. They made that phone that year for a reason. Like there's people out there that are buying this design. And yeah, that's what I always try to keep in mind when I'm writing about this phone. Like it's not for me. I can still be critical of it, but I always have to remember that in the back of my head. Like this phone is for a totally different audience in a sense.
I'm also convinced that even though the iPhone SE is like so much cheaper than other iPhones, Apple probably makes bank off of it because it's a spare parts bin phone.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like the margin on it has to be crazy enough that Apple's willing to keep making it because they know people are going to buy it. They know they're going to make a bunch of money off it. And they pretty much have a captive audience because there's no other phone with a home button in it. So if the people who want a home button are buying phones specifically for the home button, they're only buying the iPhone SE. They're not buying anything else.
Take me home button, country roads.
The last thing I'll say before we move on to the iPad Air is like, imagine how this thing's going to benchmark with that tiny screen, that not great resolution, and the A15 chip. Like, I really want to see what it ends up benchmarking as, and I'm wondering if Apple's gonna throttle it in some way.
You'll be able to play solitaire so good on it. The one thing I was gonna say, and like John kind of like answered why this probably won't happen. It's probably because they make so much money off like using the spare parts. But imagine a phone, home button, chin still there, forehead Face ID. Like, would that happen someday perhaps? So we're getting like a bit of a taller display. We still get the home button down here, a bit of a thick chin, really unique look.
It'd be cool. That's what I wanted out of the iPhone SE is like a smartphone enthusiast and someone who likes iPhones. That's what I would want to consider personally ever buying one.
Give me the home button, but just attached on the bottom, like the BlackBerry.
It's just an accessory. It just pops into the Lightning port.
That would be hilarious. Home button accessory into the Lightning port. We should sell those. Someone probably already did. We were way too late on that.
The answer to your question is basically like when that spare parts bin is empty, I think they're going to move on to the next spare parts bin. and
It must
that's what the
be
phone will look
empty.
like.
Like they must have emptied it out. I mean, they're doing new colors now. You know what I mean? They've replaced all the parts
Could
with
be.
ceramic shield. Like it's not necessarily spare parts. It's like they just don't have to remake all the mold and change up the assembly lines.
Yeah, they can use the same manufacturing equipment they've used since the iPhone 7, basically.
Yeah.
Okay,
With
iPad Air.
Right, iPad. Let's fly.
Not like anything super exciting. The Air got revamped last year, or was it in 2020? 2020, I think
Right,
was
done with the iPad Air. No, okay.
It's like it's the same design. It's like the iPad Pro, like squared off edges. There's a side fingerprint sensor. I don't believe there's Face ID. There's a USB-C port, just like the last iteration.
Twice
the
as
big
fast,
jump
though.
is like, sorry,
it's twice as fast this time.
twice as
like,
fast. Yeah, the
10 gigabyte per second or something.
That's true. And the M1 chip, right?
Yep, the M1 and 5G, baby. Woo! Yeah, no one's else excited. Yeah, I get it. But yeah, basically that's it. 5G, M1, and that thing I just said that I can't even remember.
I would be
USB port is twice as fast.
I would be excited about 5G if I didn't live in Canada where 5G doesn't exist.
It's a myth.
That's my hot take on that. My other hot take on the iPad Air, the inclusion of the M1 chip is purely spare parts bin. Apple has a bunch of M1 chips kicking around. So
everybody's trying to buy M1 Pros, M1 Maxes.
It's cheaper than making an A15 chip and board to go in an iPad Air.
Well, they had to put all the A15 chips into the iPhone SE.
Super true.
That too.
Huge idea here. Perhaps actually the next event. Okay, we're going back to, like, if you're listening to the audio podcast earlier in the podcast, if you're in the video, you're gonna have to go back to the previous video where we talked about the Mac Studios to get this reference. But in that video, we were talking about earlier we were talking about how Apple, I think the next one would be an M2, and then they would build up again. But perhaps with chip shortages this year and the binning process, it makes more sense to start with the biggest chip and then bin it on the way down, so they don't end up with all, right now they're making so many M1 Pros and M1 Maxes they can't keep up with the demand for those chips, and they must be binning a crap load of M1s out of them that they just don't know what to use. Hence, it's in the iPad Air now. Does that make sense? Or did I go through that really quick?
Sort of. I think I'm on board with what you're saying.
Essentially, they would do M2 Ultra first, because as they're making M2 Ultra chips, they would be binning M2 Plain or M2 Pro chips on the side, right? Because that's sort of the process that seems to be happening as Apple makes its chips, and thus not ending up, hopefully, with a huge influx of M1 chips at the end like we're at right now. I don't know if that makes any sense. I think it does.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm on board with it. I'm going to write something about that maybe. But anyway, let's continue with the iPad Air chip. You were basically saying that you think the M1 is in here because it's they have a ton.
Yeah. That was a take that I saw on Twitter, and I reiterated it. I don't remember who tweeted it.
I'm on board. I think it's totally real.
Yeah, I'm that makes a lot of sense to me, because I don't know, to put the M1 in the iPad Air and talk about performance benefits, to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because the M1, yeah, sure, it has a ton of performance, but you're limited by iOS or iPad OS or whatever they call it now.
We were already at the max potential with the A14 chip, really.
Yeah, and with the iPad Pro being the clear option for anyone who is looking to use an iPad for professional tasks, which, to be clear, if you want to do professional tasks on a computing device, you should not be doing it on an iPad of any kind. I just think it's really silly to put the M1 in the iPad Air. And so to me, the most logical reason for that move is that it's cheaper to produce than something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that makes a ton of sense. I mean, just going off of my previous point that kind of tied into this one is just there must be so many M1s. When I was trying to get my MacBook Pro, it was super delayed. Alex's was delayed. That she got after me. She had to return hers, and now she was trying to get an M1 Max MacBook Pro, and that was even more delayed. The delays on these high end, the M1 Max is the most delayed. M1 Pro medium level delayed because theoretically, they're binning them, so they have more of them potentially. I don't really know how binning works. Maybe it's more efficient than I think it is, but yeah, super crazy. But yeah, the iPad line, moving back into that, is just really muddy all the time. There's never these clear definitions for which iPad is right for which person. I mean, I tried to write a guide about that this morning. It's on MobileSyrup.com, and I think I did hit it. But yeah, like you said, the Air and the Pros are just like so similar now. It's weird. Like, well, actually, what you said was you didn't think that anyone would like, if you were getting one to use as real computing performance, you would get the Pro. But I think now with this one, that's not necessarily true because the Pro and the Air are kind of the same computer, unless you really care about 120 hertz screens or 2 terabytes of storage.
It was kind of like that before too, right? Like the Air even at one point had a more powerful chip than the Pro, just because the Pro was a little bit behind on the update cycle. Like I remember the last
that happened
Air
with the Mini last year.
Yeah, the Mini too. That was the same thing. The last Air, like my review of it was like, this is the iPad you should buy. Like you shouldn't buy the Pro. If you want a powerful iPad because you plan to use it for something more than just like consuming media, get the Air. Like this is the one that you should be getting. 1, it has the most powerful chip. 2, it's got the cool design. 3, it's got cool colors. It's got USB-C, so you can use all those accessories with it.
Fits in the Magic Keyboard.
I don't know. Like you're doing the review for us. Like I don't know how you're going to feel about it, if that's going to be the same case this year, but it feels like it to me because a lot of the Pros features you don't really need, right? Like the cool
that's exactly
display and that stuff.
It's just, it's weird. It almost like kills the Pro. It's just like, why? Like I get why some people would want the Pro, but for the extra few $100, it doesn't seem to be quite worth it. Like, no, unless you needed it for development. It's almost like the Mac Pro, where we were like, okay, real people probably aren't buying these. It must be developers or something. Maybe that's like the iPad Pro, and it's just like people that need LiDAR sensors. Or is there a LiDAR sensor? Oh, no, the iPhone 13 is a LiDAR sensor now. So 13 Pro.
The iPhone 13 and the iPad Pro have the LiDAR sensor, which like only certain apps use.
Well, if you were a developer for those
apps,
yeah.
But...
That's,
yeah,
I mean, if you were a developer for those apps, maybe then you're buying like an iPad Pro. And like I have an uncle who has one, but like he's just like likes Apple products. He wanted the best of the best, so we bought it. Like, but he didn't. I think anyone's doing like more research into price to performance would be more hard pressed to step up to the Pro. Unless you wanted a giant like 12-inch one too, which is still kind of crazy because it's huge.
Some people are into that.
Yeah.
Some people are really into that big 12-inch iPad. They love it.
That's probably feels really powerful to carry around. What like I guess you could use that. That would be the biggest like laptop replacement one in terms of size. I mean, I used the 12-inch MacBook for years and that was fine. I'm sure a 12-inch iPad would be worse though.
So what's the last thing on this list? The green iPhone 13 and the green iPhone 13 Pro?
Yeah.
Like I always think that it's cool that Apple introduces these new colors. It's the thing that they started last year with the purple.
I'm just not into the colors this year.
Sorry?
I said I'm just not into the colors this year.
I am. I love
you are?
The green.
You love green?
Like the green iPhone 11 Pro, the midnight green one. That was my favorite iPhone like ever, just in terms of design. It was like the peak of that curved side look that Apple was going for back with the iPhone 11.
Yeah.
The color
the iPhone 11?
Nice. Yeah, it was the iPhone 11 Pro. iPhone 11 Pro.
You mentioned something about the iPhone 11 you said?
I can't see you on the
I keep forgetting you can't see me. Zencaster, please.
But yeah, I like the colors. I think it's cool that they're doing this. I'm looking forward to checking it out. Like, I do think that they look really similar though. I got to open up the story to remember the names of them because they have.
It's just green and Alpine green, I think.
Yeah.
Is it green and Alpine green? And the Alpine is the
Pro.
The Pro, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. John, how do you feel about the greens? Yeah.
Yeah. Sick green. Really like it. Shrek phone.
Fair enough.
That's basically it. I think it's easily the best iPhone 13 Pro color.
Really? You guys don't like the blue one?
Best,
I wasn't a fan of the blue.
It's the best iPhone 13 Pro color, and I'm pretty sure it's the best iPhone 13 color, but I don't remember what all the iPhone 13 colors are off the top of my head.
John's on the right side of history.
Wow. I'm on the wrong side of history, I guess. I'm not
the
into
green
it.
color is, as far as I'm concerned, the best argument Apple has made for me to buy an iPhone 13 mini, which is something I've wanted to do for a long time, but have not done yet, and probably still will not do. But it's the best argument they've made so far.
This is probably your last year for the mini too. Like I think it's still going to be disappearing after this year.
You should.
I think so too. So
you should try and see if you can get Apple to send you one. Maybe, I don't know. Like, maybe we'll talk about this after, but perhaps like a love letter to the Mini could be a fun video similar to the iPhone 11.
maybe I'm gonna wait and see if they actually get rid of the Mini first, and then I will.
It's like you get
write a love
affiliate
letter to it.
revenue. You get affiliate revenue for every single iPhone 11 purchase.
I'm
made
not looking for
following this
money,
podcast.
dog. I'm just looking for viewers.
Okay, I don't know. Is there anything else we want to talk about these 3 items, or is that a good place to wrap it up? Like they're all like, I guess arguably worthwhile updates, but there's just not a lot to them. They're pretty expected hardware updates.
I guess the only thing that's new here we didn't mention is that the I'm assuming that the new purple color refresh did really well last year, hence why they've done it this year, and they've done it to the Pro model. Last year it was just the iPhone 12 that got the color refresh, right? The Pros didn't get
Makes
a new
sense.
color, and this year they've redone the Pro color. So, I guess the other question I kind of have out of that is, why do you guys think Apple is like? Do you think there's a larger sales strategy, or do you think they just see a potential like iPhone lag in this time of year, and they're like, we just bump out a new color, bump it back up, and that's getting us, the Q2 results we need? Or is this still Q1 for them?
I think it's definitely a sales strategy, because this is right around that time of year where I would start saying to people, if you're planning to buy an iPhone, there's a new iPhone coming in September, so you might want to wait and see what's happening. But now Apple has a brand new iPhone color, right? So
which means new marketing everywhere.
Counter marketing to get those people who might wait to just jump in and buy.
Yeah, it's to boost those sales numbers. It's like it's strictly like a sales strategy, I think.
I would love to be a fly on the wall in like the Apple boardrooms, Apple war rooms, when they like go over what colors they're going to do for the new iPhone.
Get me green.
What do you mean you only brought in 100 shades of green? Don't let anyone hear that. He'll fire you right away. Go get 500 more shades. Come back.
Okay. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. That's it. Thanks for listening to the SyrupCast. You can find me on Twitter at Patrick_Rourke, and of course on MobileSyrup.com. Got a ton of stuff I'm working on related to Apple products, and I'm also doing a review of the Steam Deck at some point in the near future. Bennett, where can people find you?
You can find me anywhere online at the Bradfad, mostly Twitter and Instagram though. And you can find my work on MobileSyrup.com. I've got a guide that went up this morning about which iPad is sort of the right one for you. In case you haven't heard, I have also a guide about why the iPhone 11 might be the best budget iPhone in 2022. And hopefully coming up an iPad review, and then helping with some more video stuff for the iPhone SE and the Mac Studio, and whatever else sort of comes across our plate in the tech world in the next few weeks.
And John, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at John_Lamont. That's JON_LAMONT. And also on the website MobileSyrup.com. My next big review coming to MobileSyrup will be about fatherhood sometime in the next month and a half.
That's so real. That's so like impactful. It's so
I love
amazing.
that. That's great.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like
Hopefully it
crazy
gets a
to think
9 out
about.
of 10.
It warms my heart to think
10
about
out of
it.
10. Starting
9.9 out of 10.
our new sister blog, Daddy Syrup.
Yeah, we were talking.
That doesn't sound like a great name.
No,
Syrup
it's
Daddy?
not a great name. Not at all.
Syrup Daddy. Ian would enjoy that one. I'll have to text him about it.
Yeah.
He's not the Syrup Dad anymore. It's John. John's taking the role. Nobody else has
Yeah.
kids.
He is
right?
on.
Somebody else hiding a
What's
kid.
funny is like I think that's his Xbox Live gamer tag. It's never him. It's like his son that's on it.
Elliot.
But every once in a while, I'll be like playing Halo, and I'll see the Syrup Dad sign in, and I'll just start laughing.
That is a good tag for him.
That's
All
a
right.
great Xbox name.
All right, see ya.
Peace.